I would like to welcome all of you, participants of Women's Health and Psychedelic Summit. I am so delighted to be invited to present on the subject of a human response to medicine. My name is Rita Bozi. I'm a multidisciplinary, somatic relational, trauma-informed facilitator and psychedelic therapist, a somatic transformation educator, author, and podcast co-host of Punk Therapy, Psychedelic Underground Neural Kindness. With 30 years experience in the healing arts, I am director of Brilliant Healing, Inc., working with individuals and groups, leading therapeutic, experiential, and creative medicine retreats. I teach internationally and train, mentor, and supervise medicine practitioners in my unique cohort program, Somatic Relational Trauma-Informed Practices for Medicine-Assisted Facilitation. In 2022, I was guest faculty at the Synthesis Institute, and in 2024, I completed a practicum in somatic transformation with Sharon Stanley, PhD. I have deep respect for and experience with both non-traditional and indigenous medicines. My way is a non-pathologizing, ancient, body-centered, attachment-based, and biopsychosocial approach to healing. I'm a retired dancer, actor, and playwright. My first novel, When I Was Better, released in 2022, is a winner of the Firebird Book Award and finalist for the Goethe International Literary Award for Late Historical Fiction. Currently, I am writing Punk Therapy, drawing on my clinical medicine work with women. I want to acknowledge my BHI team, specifically Karen Pickles and Karen Cameron, and in addition, all my teachers, mentors, therapists, clients, students, and colleagues with whom I am made more empathic, embodied, and humane through mutual and reciprocal growth. I want to thank Rachel Harris for always offering generous and valuable feedback on my presentations. And I want to acknowledge the work of my teacher, Sharon Stanley, who draws on the research of Alan Shore, Darsha Narvaez, and Antonio Damasio, and many others. I weave their teachings into therapeutic preparation, medicine facilitation, and the embodied integration process of psychedelic-assisted therapy. And I want to thank Gabor Mate for teaching me fierce transparency, the practice of humility, and processing difficulty in real time. And I would like to acknowledge the original stewards of this land and the knowledge keepers of this territory known as Calgary. In the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we honor and acknowledge Mohensis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory. We acknowledge all nations, indigenous and non, who live, work, heal, guest, create, and play on this land, and who honor and celebrate this territory. And most importantly, I want to thank the student that has generously lent her story to this presentation and the Syrian doctor who inspired me. I'll be sipping tea every so often as I present to you. I come to you from the psychedelic underground, where I belong to a cherished sisterhood and community of dedicated, committed, and skillful practitioners and students. I've been in clinical practice for almost 30 years with foundations in somatic relational, trauma, and touch-informed practices. I've facilitated medicine for well over 400 individuals in private, group, or cohort settings. In the last 5 years, I've been accompanied by a wonderful team of international practitioners without whom I could not do what I do. You can listen to the podcast I co-host with Dr. T called Punk Therapy, Psychedelic Underground Neural Kindness. And for information about my work and learning opportunities, you can check out my website, brillianthealingsystems.com. But what is more salient about me is what my ancestors, parents, and family lived through in Hungary in the 1900s. War, poverty, social oppression, a Soviet occupation, and a reign of political terror in the 1950s. Humans were hunted down for their political, personal, and religious beliefs. Silence, terror, and hiding was a way of life. In Budapest, students, workers, and freedom fighters from all walks of life staged a demonstration. The demonstration turned into a revolution. Soviet troops were sent in. The world looked on as Hungarians pleaded for foreign support. SOS, 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 pleaded the announcer on Radio Free Europe. No one came. Eventually, 2,000 Soviet tanks crushed the Hungarians' 13 days of hard-won freedom. My parents are refugees. My own cells hear the whispers of what it is to live daily in life threat while going at it on our own. Much of this informs my worldview on what it means to be human, what it means to be humane, and what it requires to heal from ancestral trauma. Trauma that can show up for decades inside our psyches, souls, bodies, and dreams. And most fundamentally, in our relationships with each other and the planet. Before I get into the meat of this presentation, I wish to offer a poem by the Celtic poet John O'Donoghue, so that we may together open our imaginations and support our collective felt sense of embodiment. This poem is about birth and those others that behold you. Blessed be the mind that dreamed the day the blueprint of your life would begin to glow on earth, illuminating all the faces and voices that would arrive to invite your soul to grow. Praised be your father and mother who loved you before you were and trusted to call you here with no idea who you would be. Blessed be those who have loved you into becoming who you were meant to be. Blessed be those who have crossed your life with dark gifts of hurt and loss that have helped to school your mind in the art of disappointment. When desolation surrounded you, blessed be those who looked for you and found you, their kind hands urgent to open a blue window in the gray wall formed around you. Blessed be the gifts you never notice, your health, eyes to behold the world, thoughts to countenance the unknown, memory to harvest vanished days, your heart to feel the world's waves, your breath to breathe the nourishment of distance made intimate by earth. On this echoing day of your birth, may you open the gift of solitude in order to receive your soul. Enter the generosity of silence to hear your hidden heart. Know the serenity of stillness, to be enfolded in you by the miracle of your being. I will circle back to this poem, but for now, I encourage you just take a moment and scribble down a few phrases that most intrigue you or images that have stuck with you from this poem. You can pause this presentation for a moment if you'd like to. But I'd like to go on to speak about my approach to medicine work and how it's informed by attending to my own ancestral, developmental, relational, and spiritual trauma on an ongoing basis. I focus my attention on how ancestral inheritance and its seemingly invisible impact informs cellular function and attachment wounds. I witness the significance of soul wounds and how our intergenerational trauma can show up in our nervous systems as defenses, fixed action patterns, and relational conflict, and in the myriad expressions of the spirit and distortions of the body. These inheritances and the lived lives of our parents come through soundless soul wounds transmitted through the womb. They come through the silent shatterings of our hearts as children and through the sometimes excruciating aloneness of our predicaments as we grow into adults. They affect us individually, culturally, socially, and globally. From our earliest moments of life, we cry out for help and connection. Our survival depends on a response from another human. We have bodies and reflexes to reach, grab, draw in, and embrace other bodies. We fundamentally need each other, and we need each other to respond to us when we are in distress. We see it today in those countries pleading for foreign intervention to not only stop the bloodshed and destruction, but to provide food and water for starving populations. We also have reflexes to push away, to withdraw, and to turtle from danger, from pain, and from life threat. And we have mechanisms to shut down and disconnect from the hopeless and devastating effects of neglect and inappropriate care. Hidden and not so hidden messages in our societies praise going at things alone, do it yourself, and at taking space and for finding it within oneself. We are silently and not so silently shamed when we can't find something within ourselves. And we can be left to struggle excessively on our own until we get it for ourselves. This lack of engagement with us in crucial times can be seen as some act of benevolence, proving that we always had what we needed within. But do we? Do we all have equal opportunities and the privilege to develop and be cherished as humans in this world? I think that's a good idea and a good dream. But as my friend Gabor Mate says, life's not fair. Not all of us have the privilege of being treated as humans. The reality is that a human body first develops within another human body. Here's a quote for you. Human organisms first develop within another human body. Crucially, while not all humans will have the experience of being pregnant or carrying a baby, the experience of being carried and growing within another person's body is universal. That's a quote from an article called The First Prior, From Co-Embodiment to Co-Homeostasis in Early Life. From the beginning, a human body needs to meet many requirements to stay alive and grow. Traditionally, people thought the mother's body was just a container for the baby. However, evidence shows that both the mother and the baby actively interact and co-regulate each other. Our perceptual experiences get off the ground from the outset in utero. Our human origins are fundamentally relational. We co-embody, we co-regulate, and we co-reflect to grow into social beings. All of our cells do this. And as we grow, we are better able to rely on ourselves if we have matured through specific developmental phases with appropriate care. And what happens when we have not received adequate human care at critical periods? If we ourselves have become numb to human need due to a multitude of factors, including our own relational, developmental trauma or neglect, or apathy at the state of the world, we can become disconnected from our own unmet needs for contact, interaction, and responsiveness. We can build entire social systems, modalities, and protocols built upon this very blind spot. And if we are unaware of that disconnection, numbness, and disassociation, it's how we manage our distress. And how will we then recognize the signs of suffering in another before it's too late? How will we interrupt the multi-generational cultural trauma of the anxiety of isolation and the atrocious abandonment of humans? I understand from my own difficult medicine journeys, both in life and in altered states of consciousness, the times when I felt liberated by finding the strength and fortitude to interact with the medicine, the music, or my inner healer. Those were for sure fulfilling moments. And I had the resource and enough observer witness to dissolve trauma and source my essential spirit. But there have been other times when my spinal cord and brainstem felt electrocuted from environmental overstimulation, from trauma trapped in my system, or from the awareness of detached, hands-off, fend-for-yourself facilitation. The guide was trying to teach me a lesson. And yet, it was this torturous abandonment at the most delicate times of my growth as a child that eventually led me towards addiction and self-harm. Did I need to live that abandonment again and again? Many say we have to find the inner parent. And yet, not being recognized for dropping into a state of early infant trauma once again prolonged damage to my health, my sleep, and my relationships. The chronic shame intensified. I know in the heart of my heart that one well-placed hand, that one sincere expression of human care, or a skillful somatic intervention by one attuned, embodied, creative other has catalyzed significant healing from my early infant traumas. So let's move this exploration into the realm of psychedelics. In a psychedelic session, clients can shut down, go numb, or drop into nonverbal states and are not always able to ask for help, touch, or engagement. They can feel a profound sense of aloneness, stuckness, terror, and isolation. This can cause re-traumatization. These states require the therapist to be intuitive, embodied, and creative and offer a human response. Noticing, attuning to, and attending to the nervous system of a client can make the difference between re-traumatizing or companioning a client into co-regulation, safety, and developmental growth. John O'Donohue's words echo in my mind. Blessed be the mind that dreamed the day, the blueprint of your life would begin to glow on earth, illuminating all the faces and voices that would arrive to invite your soul to growth. I will explore my thesis through a case study in a moment. But first, I want to tell you about a Syrian doctor who inspired me. During COVID, I was obsessed with watching documentaries, particularly about Syria. There is only one building left in the outskirts of Damascus, a makeshift hospital. The rest of the vast suburb has been reduced to rubble by Russian airstrikes. The sound of bombing is always near. A terrified mother delivers a blue baby. There are no incubators. There are only hundreds of injured humans, the bulk of them children, laying one on top of the other in the hallways. I'm riveted by this doctor as he holds the baby by its ankles upside down and begins to rub its body with immense vigor. At first, I'm shocked at the precise conviction with which he rubs the baby's back, then its whole body. This goes on for a full minute of footage. The only sound is the rubbing of skin against the backdrop of a tense silence. Will the baby live? I'm starting to see that this doctor knows exactly what he's doing. Amidst sounds of bombing, this baby starts to turn pink and breathes for the first time. sounds of life. The mother breaks into a wail of anguish and joy. The doctor lays the baby on the mother's body. In the midst of terror and horror, I am moved to tears by this very human moment. For some reason, I can't stop thinking about this. For some reason, I know I'm going to need this one day, what I have seen this doctor do. So now let's look at a case study of a student enrolled in an international program I'm teaching. This is a case study for a human response. I have permission to chronicle this student's story, and she has read it over several times, this encounter. I also want to offer in advance that some of this material may be sensitizing, so please notice your cues of arousal. I will call her Saskia. Saskia is a gifted, skillful therapist, herself a psychedelic therapist and a medicine woman. She was a premature baby and she was born not breathing, almost dead, and whisked away into an incubator or humidicrib. Within 5 months of her short life, her parents traveled abroad for a holiday, leaving her with her paternal grandparents. By the time Saskia was 6, her family was thrown into chaos when her father landed in jail. Then again when she was 11. Then for a third time while she was an exchange student at the age of 16. That is when her family disintegrated and they were scattered about the country. At 17, her anorexia started to bloom. Saskia spent the bulk of 5 years in a hospital verging on death. She finished her university while still in a treatment bed. She often says she survived due to the male psychotherapist who told her he would stay with her until she healed. And he did. He committed to her being his patient despite moving into drug and alcohol treatment, and he remained her therapist, never leaving his commitment. She attests her recovery to his staunch commitment to her. So I would classify her trauma as complex, relational, developmental, adverse events, and intergenerational, with the relational component on the severe end. Her trauma is not only of the past, but of the present. When Saskia called her mother to tell her that she had decided to leave her emotionally abusive husband, her mother swiftly changed the subject. Her mother continues to be emotionally absent, and her father suffers from untreated complex post-traumatic stress himself and is losing his faculties due to aging. And Saskia has also been raising her several children on her own for close to a decade. She has a generous, kind, and buoyant heart. She works very hard personally and professionally, and like many of us, slips into early adaptations when stress overwhelms her. One such adaptation is her developmental tendency to want to flee and then drop into a quick freeze, shutdown, withdrawal, or dissociation as a mechanism to deal with situations that get too overwhelming, too intimate, or could expose her vulnerability. This vulnerability leaves her potentially open to more abandonment and loss. And while she's come a long way in this reflexive life-saving defense, this can get amplified when traumatic material is stirred in the viscera or under psychedelics. Saskia is very responsive to consistent, honest, and transparent communication and welcomes mutuality, reciprocity, and shared understanding. Her own personal work with psychedelics has been mostly treacherous, often finding herself working with solo male guides. She often finds herself in terror horror states and they get stuck there. Under medicine, Saskia has had memories surface of her grandfather molesting her at the age of 2. She has images of herself on a change table, completely frozen. Dead is the word she uses. She has thought for a very long time that her visions of molestation have been the origins of her freeze state and her psychedelics. But her repetitive medicine experiences, high dose journeys with a lack of human interaction or appropriate supportive touch, frequently leaves her in a frozen, numb, and shut down state for hours on end. These states are painful and seemingly unending scenarios that rarely find resolution. In one such medicine session, the male guide was applying the rules of a methodology in which touch or interaction is not given unless explicitly asked for. Through my supervision group, which Saskia attends, she was able to identify the state she encounters as tonic immobility. When she finds herself here over and over again, her subsequent days, weeks, and months are painful, isolating, and self-flagellating. She always wonders, what's wrong with me? She feels a painful longing for something different. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with tonic immobility is a temporary state of motor inhibition believed to be a response to situations involving extreme fear. When someone encounters danger, their body doesn't always respond with fight or flight immediately. Instead, there's often a brief freeze to assess the situation. So victims of sexual violence can experience tonic immobility where they feel stiff and unable to move or speak due to intense fear and the perceived or real inability to escape. This reaction, similar to how animals play dead, helps protect them from further harm. Many survivors describe feeling frozen during the assault as a result of this natural human response. Tonic immobility is also associated with PTSD symptoms in traumatized adolescents. Newborn babies also undergo immobility reactions, immobilization, frozen face, shallow breathing, and brachycardia. Some studies link these immobility reactions with maternal prenatal stress. Babies' immobility reactions at birth mirror how people typically react to intense stress or danger. So now, I'm going to take you to an encounter with Saskia in a state of tonic immobility. I'm supervising medicine practice sessions, and this encounter lasts roughly 45 minutes. So the women in this cohort are working in trios. There's a client, a therapist, and a co-therapist. Saskia is 20 minutes in. She's dosed with 120 milligrams of MDMA, followed quickly by 15 milligrams of ketamine insufflated. When I enter the room, I see that Saskia is experiencing numbness, immobility, rapid shallow breathing, and tetany. So tetany is a tingling, a numbness, and a physical tightness that results from a decrease in carbon dioxide in the blood caused by hyperventilation. But this is, however, not a holotropic breathwork moment. There's something else happening in her body. Under her blanket, she has lobster claw hands, and they're very, very tight, very, very tense. Her arms are pressed against the sides of her body, and her face is in terror and horror. And she's highly agitated, though frozen. So you can feel this freeze and this agitation happening at the same time. The student lead and the co-lead are looking really concerned, not quite sure what to do, although I can sense they're concerned, but they're hiding it. They're letting me know through their eyes. And I'm a little concerned that they have caught the contagion of this freeze. Incidentally, freeze is one of the most contagious states that we as practitioners can catch in the middle of a session. But I can see that their hearts are connecting with Saskia's anguish. I can't feel my heart. Saskia repeats this over and over again with anguish in her voice. I come in closer to assess the situation. I sit down next to Saskia on her mat with my hand on her shoulder. my arms is all she can say. Sitting close to her, I ground my energy, I regulate my heart, and I swiftly clock her history in my mind. Perinatal distress, near death, a separation from her caregivers a few months in, visions of her grandfather molesting her, and countless medicine sessions where she ends up in this state for hours on end without an intervention from the guide. Once again, she is in the same unresolvable scenario. I can see how hard this is on her body. I can see how hard this is on her soul, the panic, the inability to express more than a few words, this inability to move while she is also in observable pain. She can't go anywhere. It is a serious scenario, and I know I must intervene, even if Saskia can't ask for help. All she can do is report on her heart and her hands and her arms. Saskia can't keep on going through this. She's had too many immobilized states since the moment she was born. She is soon to be 50 years old, and half a century later, it is time for wise human engagement. The Syrian doctor comes to me and the baby he saved. I say to the student practitioners, each of you, get on either side of her. I want you to rub her arms and then her legs vigorously. Keep going, don't stop, warm her up. I want you to keep going and do not stop. Just keep going until I tell you to stop. With care, they beautifully set to work with kind hands. I cradle Saskia's head, a cranial sacral intervention, and reassure. Hey, sweetheart, you are not alone. We are here with you and we want to be here with you. The rubbing continues. Her body is still stiff and rigid. Keep going, I say to the two committed practitioners. Hey, sweetie pie, can you feel us here with you? We are not going anywhere. We're not going to leave you alone. Saskia's head and neck are rigid in my hands. There's no movement whatsoever. I continue to transmit warmth from my hands to her brainstem. She's beginning to sob. And then she begins to sob heavily and deeply, but her body is still somehow rigid. Her hands are still claws, but there's a movement, a sobbing coming through her body. I remain calm and patient. I look at the two women and I say to them, now I'd like you to apply direct pressure downwards on her limbs so she can really feel your bodies with her. I place my hand on her heart. We've been here for a good half hour, or perhaps a good 49 years. I'm thinking John O'Donohue. When desolation surrounded you, blessed be those who looked for you and found you with their kind hands, urgent to open a blue window in the gray wall formed around you. Suddenly, Saskia releases her head into my one hand, as though a ball has dropped. That's it, love. You're coming back. She starts to cry now, but in a different way. It's as if there's something, a river moving through her body. She surrenders her head and neck fully into my hand. I feel the immense relief in her body and her heart. There is a dance that's beginning to form between us, a movement back and forth. Saskia finally says, I can feel my heart. I've never given birth to a baby, but when I hear those words, I can feel my heart. I swear I know the feeling of someone announcing to me, it's a girl. My heart is expansive with gratitude. I'm grateful for the patience to wait for her. I'm grateful for the patience of being human. You can stop the pressure now, I say to the two women, but please stay close to Saskia. And they nod. Saskia says, this is my favorite song. Mine too, I blurt out. It's Fragment 2 by Library Tapes, in case you're wondering. Her eyes are peeking out like a newborn. absolutely captivating. The spacious single notes of the piano match the little twinkles in her eyes, moments of emergence, life, spirit, humans, and connection. Our eyes stay in touch, and I ask the women to come a little bit closer so they too can see her lovely eyes. They're sparkling. They take her in with love. My three witches, says Saskia, and we all break into laughter. Writing this presentation and reflecting with Saskia, she said it was only before that practice session that she realized that the origin of this tonic state of immobility originated with her traumatic birth. She writes to me, countless medicine sessions, I ended up in this state for hours on end without a single intervention from the guide. I ask her when she made this realization. She tells me I was lecturing on developmental trauma. And from the perspective of the nervous system, the only available defense babies have initially is to cry out or to shut down. And if we cry out, we actually need someone to respond to us or we will shut down. Saskia was putting the puzzle pieces together. She writes me, and the three sets of hands warming my body, rubbing it, the blood was coming back to life. Those hands on my body was what I needed, all three sets. The rubbing on my legs, the rubbing everywhere else. The co-regulation is what eased the hyperventilation. I was so relieved to have co-regulation. It's what allowed those cycles to come and go like waves as I lent into the physical touch. The act of writing is a solitary endeavor, but I need you, the reader, to respond to what I have written, or my words, ideas, and offerings have no life of their own. Reading, listening, and engaging is relational. Noticing, attuning is relational. And healing and transformation is also relational. It is the most human and humane action to respond to a cry for help. And in the end, we never stop needing other humans. First together, then later alone, and then back together. And so it goes in a cycle of tending to ourselves to tend to the other, tending to ourselves to tend to the other. Thank you for listening. Feel free to leave any comments or contact me directly at brillianthealingsystems.com. I hope you've had a fabulous summit, and thank you for inviting me.